They say some messages are not delivered, they are placed. Not into your hands, but into your fate. Mara Vey never believed in signs, until the night her name appeared in silver ink on paper that felt colder than skin. No sender. No reason. Only a direction, Hollow Vale. By the time she arrived, the world around her felt wrong in ways she couldn't explain. The village didn't look abandoned, it looked paused, like something had told life to stop breathing. And when Edrin Vale smiled at her, it wasn't welcoming. It was recognition. As if she wasn't arriving for the first time, but returning. That night, the building whispered beneath her feet. And Mara understood something she couldn't know: she was not invited. She was expected. In Hollow Vale, silence wasn't absence of sound. It was a rule. Every movement was measured. Every breath controlled. The people didn't live, they obeyed something unseen. Then there was Lyra. She was the only one who still looked afraid, as if fear itself had been forbidden but never removed. Her voice trembled when she spoke of disappearances, of people who didn't die, but were taken correctly, as if that made it worse. The cult called it honor. But honor doesn't leave empty chairs at dinner tables that never lose their dust. When the bells rang that night, the air changed. Not louder. Heavier. Like the world itself had lowered its head, and somewhere beneath the monastery, something answered back. Some places are built above secrets. Hollow Vale was built above a hunger. Mara followed the sound because silence was no longer convincing. The deeper she went, the more the mountain felt alive, breathing through stone, sweating through walls, remembering things it should have forgotten. Down there, the cult did not pray. They listened, and what they listened to, listened back. When the chains moved without wind, and the pit spoke her name without a mouth, Mara understood the first real truth of Hollow Vale. Whatever lived below was not sleeping. It was waiting to be noticed. They called it ceremony, but nothing sacred should feel like panic disguised as tradition. White robes, trembling hands, voices repeating words that had long stopped meaning anything. Mara stood at the edge of something that wasn't a hole, it was absence made physical. A place where reality seemed unwilling to continue. Then it moved. Not rising. Not falling. But remembering itself upward. When Lyra screamed, it wasn't rebellion. It was survival breaking protocol. And when fire met flesh below the earth, the sound wasn't anger. It was recognition. As if the thing inside had finally been reminded that it could feel pain. Running doesn't always mean escape. Sometimes it just means you're still inside the story, only farther from its beginning. The forest didn't hide them. It observed them. Edrin's truth arrived like a wound reopening after years. Mara's life was not chosen randomly. It was cultivated. Designed. Watched. Her existence was not an accident of humanity. It was an agreement made before she ever learned how to speak. And somewhere between rain and branches and breathing darkness, Mara realized the worst part. The cult wasn't following the sleeper. They were protecting everyone else from what it might become if it ever woke completely beneath Hollow Vale. Reality stopped pretending it was stable. The sleeper was not one being. It was accumulation of lives, of memories, of everything the earth refused to forget properly. Faces formed and dissolved like thoughts too large for language. Mara didn't feel fear anymore. Fear requires distance. And there was no distance left. When it called her name, it wasn't sound. It was recognition across impossible time. Like something remembering it had once been part of her, or she of it. And Lyra, she didn't survive because she was strong. She survived because something down there hesitated. Just long enough. Fire does not destroy secrets. It only forces them to move. Hollow Vale broke open like a sealed mouth finally forced to speak. The mountain didn't collapse, it released. Edrin's final words weren't warning. They were confession. The sleeper was never meant to be worshipped. It was containment. A lock built from sacrifice and silence. And Mara, she was not the key. She was the pressure behind the lock. When the ground split and the voices rose without bodies, it didn't feel like ending. It felt like the beginning of something that had been waiting beneath every beginning ever made. And far away, in the silence that followed, something kept whispering her name, even though there was no longer a place left to say it. There are disasters that end a place, and there are disasters that simply change what a place is. Hollow Vale was no longer a village. No longer a ruin. It had become something uncertain, as if geography itself refused to confirm what remained. The authorities called it unstable ground, geological anomaly, natural collapse. But Mara knew better. Because the whispers didn't stop when the dust settled. They only learned to speak softer. Lyra sat beside her in silence most nights, staring at nothing as if waiting for something that had not yet decided whether it was finished with them. And Mara could feel it too, deep beneath thought, beneath memory. A presence that had not left. Only retreated. It started with dreams. Not dreams in the usual sense, but intrusions. Moments where Mara was not asleep, yet no longer fully awake. In those spaces, she saw corridors that did not exist in waking architecture. Endless stone passages shaped like veins. Doors that opened inward into impossible depth. And always, something following without footsteps. When she woke, her hand would be covered in fine black dust, like burnt memory. Lyra began noticing it too. A mark, faint at first, appearing beneath the skin near her wrist. Not a wound. Not ink. Something closer to recognition made physical. "We didn't escape it," Lyra whispered once. "We just stopped being where it could reach directly." Mara didn't answer. Because she had started hearing it even without sleep. Calling not from below anymore, but from everywhere at once. The world above Hollow Vale tried to rebuild itself around the absence. But absence is not empty. It expands. Strange reports began spreading beyond the mountains. People forgetting entire hours. Entire names. Entire faces they had loved for years suddenly becoming unfamiliar. Maps changed in subtle ways no one could explain. Roads that once led elsewhere began bending back toward nowhere. And in every case, before confusion set in, witnesses described the same sensation. A feeling of being watched from beneath. Understanding itself, Mara and Lyra left the region, but distance proved meaningless. Because whatever had been buried under Hollow Vale was no longer tied to one place. It was learning the shape of the world above. It happened without warning. A sound on every frequency at once. Not heard through ears, but through awareness. Mara froze in the middle of an empty street as reality seemed to thin around her vision. People passed by unaware, but she could see it now, tiny distortions around every living thing, like invisible threads connecting them downward. To something waiting. Lyra grabbed her arm. "It's waking up again," she said quietly. Not afraid this time. Certain. And then came the realization that turned Mara's blood cold. It had never been asleep. Sleep implies rest. This was patience. And patience means intention. Mara finally understood what Edrin never finished saying. The sleeper was not trapped beneath the earth. The earth was what kept it hidden from becoming whole. Every sacrifice had been a delay. Every ritual a reinforcement of something too fragile to remain stable forever. And now, with Hollow Vale gone, with containment fractured, with silence no longer enforced, there was nothing left to prevent recognition from spreading fully. Lyra looked at her one last time that night. "If it finishes waking," she said, "it won't rise." She paused. "It will overwrite." And somewhere deep in the structure of reality itself, something finally answered back without hesitation. Not Mara's name this time, but the world's.